This has happened to me. Has it happened to you? You get a disc that is sent to you or that you have lying around that you really need to get the information from, but you don't have anything to read it with. It's like maybe an old CD-ROM or maybe even a DVD, and you're looking around your laptop and you're like, wait, there's no disk drives in here. And, you might not keep around legacy computers and DVD players and CD-ROM drives to read discs. If you do, then that's great, but I don't. So, you have to buy equipment just to read the disc that you get. It's a mess. But imagine if you then put it in that equipment and you get the worst message, disc read error. That there cannot be anything worse than that. After all that effort, the disc can't be read. Well, that disc that we got there, at most it's probably going to be about 25 years old that we can't read it. But what if I told you there was a disc that is 3,000 years old and more maybe that we can't read? Well, there is, and I'm going to talk about it on today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet. I'm John Paulas. Thanks for joining me. If you're enjoying Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you. And if you use a Brave browser, you can now contribute basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulas on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you, as always, for listening. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention, we're going to ask the cards for some help with deciphering our work and lives. So stick around for that as well. On yesterday's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, I talked about the Rongo writing system, which may be an independently developed writing system created on the island of Rapa Nui in the southern eastern part of the Pacific Ocean. On today's episode, the third in the series of 3 about writings that we just can't read and probably never be able to, is about another island writing system that may have been independently developed, but we might, if we're not sure that we even know if it was independently developed. So that's how mysterious the script is. And the script was found on the island of Crete. And this is where the disc read error comes in, because the artifact that has this writing system on it is called the Phaistos Disc. In 1908, in the southern part of the island of Crete in the eastern Mediterranean, an Italian archaeologist found a disc that was made of clay, a few inches in diameter, and which had strange stamped characters pressed into it. And this disc had on both sides. Oh, so there was an A side and a B side. That's kind of cool. I wonder if which one is the B side, or maybe it's a double A side. Who knows? But the Phaistos disc, the stamps and the characters were so strange that over the years, people thought this was some sort of hoax. But there were things, but it's not, because there are things that have been found in different archaeological contexts that couldn't have possibly known about the hoax and that were buried around the same time as these discs about 3,000 years ago that emerged and had symbols and characters that kind of looked almost exactly like ones that were on this disc. So unless there were multiple people in multiple places 3,000 years ago trying to pull a hoax on us, this is not a modern or ancient hoax. This is for real. But the trouble with our disc read error is not only is there no technology that we can put this disc in to read it, but also we don't know at all what language is underneath the characters. And even if we assume that it is that, remember I was talking about that early language that was indigenous to the islands of the Eastern Mediterranean and maybe also western parts of Asia Minor, that maybe we have some words for, like the word for almond in various languages, originally being something like amygdali, which is the Greek term that was borrowed from this ancient language, most likely. Even if we could say, oh, it's that language, we don't have enough reconstructed remnants of that language to really have much of a, say, database to draw from when we're looking at the Phaistos Disc and other things. So we wouldn't even be able to place anything because we don't have enough information about the language in the first place. We can be pretty sure that it's not related to the Greek language. And the reason that we know that is because, well, in 1950, another script, another writing system that was found in artifacts from Crete 70 years before was finally deciphered. And it proved to be a very, very, very early form of the Greek language. And that writing system was called Linear B, and still called Linear B. And the Greek that it contained was a very old form of Greek, showing that Greek has been spoken on the island of Crete for about 3,000 years. So that's a pretty cool fact. But there was a language there before that was not at all Greek. And this is maybe that language that's related to our language, what we could maybe call the almond language, but related to some place names and words that are not of Greek origin. Well, here's where things get really difficult, because there's a script that was in place called Linear A, and that script has only been partially deciphered, and it's only been partially deciphered because we know what Linear B sound values are, and we see that some of them are the same in Linear A. So, for example, the place name Phaistos, and this is in the southern part of Crete. The place name Phaistos we have in Greek. We also have in Linear B Greek, which is Paisto. And it's 3 characters, and then the same characters, more or less, one looks slightly different, but the same characters spell the place name in Linear A. So we have 3 versions of that all are kind of the same. So, things like that in Linear A we can read, but that's a place name. Unfortunately, whatever is underneath Linear A is a language, like what's ever underneath the Phaistos Disc, that is not related to Greek. So that is that indigenous language to the Aegean that existed before Greek settlers arrived on those islands about 3,000 years ago. And there was actually a Linear A tablet that was found in the same layer when they were digging as the Phaistos Disc. But again, this doesn't really solve any of our problems, because what's on the Phaistos Disc are highly pictorial. There's a head of a human being with maybe a helmet or spiky hair, and so it's clear that they're highly pictorial. But the Linear A script, like Linear B, are much more abstract characters, so you can't necessarily relate any of them to any of the others. There are, however, what are called Cretan hieroglyphs, which do look like symbols on the Phaistos Disc and characters on the Phaistos Disc, whatever you want to call them. And there's a little bit of overlap. There are some that look the same. And there are other artifacts, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, that appear to have some of the same, and there are about 45 unique stamps, characters on the Phaistos Disc, and there are other artifacts that have some of those, maybe like 12 that they share. And so, in a sense, there's something going on here where we know that this is actually a system. This isn't just some random, fun decoration. This is clearly a system. And also, it's done in this kind of circular pattern. And that circular pattern, there's a linear A, I think it's a ring that has a linear A inscription on it that is also in that kind of circular pattern. So this kind of circular writing, which is also kind of cool because, it's writing in a circle. Usually we think about left to right and right to left and the top to bottom, bottom to top. But this is circular writing, which is kind of neat. It looks a little bit like a kind of maze puzzle, which is also really interesting because, our whole thing about labyrinths and the Minotaur and all of that stuff. Well, those stories all take place in myth and legend on the island of Crete. So that's kind of neat that there's this mysterious piece of writing done in a kind of maze-like way that we have that's from a place where, well, a place famous for mazes. You might even say it's amazing. So let's ask the cards about reading our lives, and maybe they have the key to deciphering our work in life for us today. So here we go. Yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles, cards, tell us somethings. Oh, it's card 47. Culture is a living being. Oh, well, this was fitting for our archaeological excavation today. Every identifiable arrangement of human beings has a culture. Like any living being, cultures wish to reproduce themselves and stay alive. Cultures speak through their people without the people being aware of it. While still part of the culture, a person cannot stand apart from what keeps the culture alive. The culture will not allow it. So, identify some cultures in which you operate today and try to decipher what makes that culture tick. So what keeps it alive? And when you have that key to deciphering the cultures that you are a part of, you'll be able to read everything else with ease.